Hello, Franklin. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Mustafa. Really, really well. Thanks for the invitation, and I'm ready to talk about data.
Nice pleasure to have you on our podcast. This is our first podcast with you, and I'm sure you're going to share a lot of things. Our topic is amazing topic. It's all again on AI governance. I'm sure our audience will really resonate with it. So our practice is we open the floor for our guests to introduce themselves. It's a little bit the other way around. I don't spend time introducing guests because there are a lot of things guests want to share with the audience. So Franklin, floor is all yours. Love to hear from you. Who are you? Where
Okay.
are you from? What's your background? How you came into this whole domain of data and AI?
Okay. Well, I introduce a little of myself. I am Franklin Barriga Lopez Jr. I am a doctor and I am a lawyer. I am international corporate lawyer, if I am more precisely. I am a legal strategist and CEO of my own law firm that's called Barriga Co. That is an international law firm that stands in four countries, stay in Spain, stay in Mexico, stay in Ecuador, and stay in Colombia. We are like more than 50 lawyers that stay associated with us. And I am the station ambassador of CS World, that is an international organization of strategy, intelligence, and security community.
Mhm.
Uh, that community advise investors, technology, data protection, AI governance, crypto access, intellectual property, corporate governance, and legal risks of management. And I also have been detained recently of Dr. Honoris Causa in political science at the International Mariska Academy on Russia, in recognition of my professional and academic contribution, especially on data and political science. Obviously, I like the few lawyers that, especially on technology, strategic intelligence, corporate data accountability, and I am boy like 8 years in this incredible work of data. I have a master's degree in Spain of data protection and intellectual property on
Okay.
Valencia, Spain. And I participate frequently in these topics, in these speakers, like a commentator in academic, business, and technology forums. Yes, I can say that.
Okay, awesome. So you have been doing a lot of stuff, and we would love to hear from you because you are a lawyer. So I think you are the right person to talk about governance and accountability. And these are one of the most core, apart from data foundation and coherence, actually transparency and all those things, the GDPR and all those regulatory requirements that people do not understand actually. We all know that how developers work, right? And how business asks. They simply ask and they want to get it done. Yeah, AI has really strengthened development, I would say domain. Development has really speed up because of AI tools, but it does not mean that you get rid of governance, get rid of accountability. That is where we all have been lacking for many decades. But since AI is here, and it is really speeding up things, and it is opening, and it is amplifying all those hidden things which were last time were handled by or covered by humans because things were slower. But now AI amplifies everything. It opens all those Pandora boxes which was manually handled by humans before, right? And that is another biggest issue for AI. That is the reason, if you go 1.5 years back up to the Gen AI, things were moving very fast. But if we start hearing things since maybe mid of 2025 or even early of 2025 till now, AI is just stagnant. There hasn't been a lot of development happening in AI. Why? I feel one is, of course, coherence and data foundation, and the other one is accountability, right? So tell us, our first of all, our topic for our audience is AI governance and legal accountability, and then automated decision making, risk management, and defensible internal controls. That's what our topic. It's very, I would say, very law related topic. I'm sure our audience, senior audience, will really like it. Tell us about this topic, and then we have a questionnaire. Yeah, I will go through all those questions one by one. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I tell you, I am the few lawyers that associate CEOs because the topic of technology issue in the we have the developers, we have the science, we have who take the decisions, but also it's important the attorneys. Why? Because we are doing an accessory the regulations because the technology goes in the adjacent steps, but it also have to be regulated. For example, the European Union is very, very important because what they do, the protection data reglement that was in 2021, and this was the step, the main core to all the regulation worldwide. Because governance is becoming a legal priority because artificial intelligence has moved from experimentation into the core business of operation. Remember that we are right now in the for industrial career. And it's no longer limitation to innovation labs, data science teams, or isolated proof of concepts. Today, AI is being integrated into banking, insurance, healthcare, requirement, customer service, cybersecurity, fraud detections that as a digital lawyer done, marketing, public service, and the legal workflows. So that means the AI and the data is not only technology, as I said, it has become a decision infrastructure of all society. Okay, and once the technology become part of that decision, the legal responsibility flows. Okay, so for a data and the AI audience, I will frame in that way. There is no serious AI governance without serious data governance. So AI system depends on the data, the quality of the data, the legality of the data, the context of the data, how do you train the data, the security, and the bias in the data, the line of the data, and the way it's transforming into the outputs. Okay? If the data is flowed, have errors, the AI system may be flowed. If the data is unfairly obtained, the AI may be unfavorable. We have to remember that the AI has algorithmic errors. Okay? So if the data is based, the model may reproduce that. If the data is not traceable, the company may be not able to explain that decision. So that the governance is not separate the legal at the end. It must be connected to the data governance from the beginning and also the compliance. So the legal priority appears because the companies now need to answer difficult questions. Like for example, that some customer says to me, what AI tools are we using? ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepShirt. What data will you process of the customers, of the wearer, of the legal, of the healthcare? What was the data collected lawfully? And that is important because remember that the European Union said that biotropic data is also illegal, okay? Because it's sensitive information. And is that model making decisions or only supporting decisions? Because remember, the A Act of the European Union said that, okay, it's automatic decisions, but at the end, who takes the decision and review has to be only a human being. Okay? So for that, can we explain the outputs? Can we audit the process? Can a human intervene? Can the affected person challenge the results? Okay? So I think that the main question is not only can we will this with the data? Now the serious question for me is can we convert this with the data with correct compliance? Okay? So for me, AI governance is a system that allows a company to innovate without losing institutional control. It's not anti-innovation. On the contrary, it that makes innovation sustainable. Companies that implement AI with that governance move more quickly, but they are also accumulate hidden risks, legal risks, reputational risks, data risks, vendor risks, cyber security risks, and operational risks. So the main companies will be the ones that understand that the A governance is not only a PDF policy that you only don't know, okay? It's an operate model and a personality model that includes the data governance, the legal review, the technical validation, the risk classification, and the executive accountability, okay? So the risk, in resume, is not using the AI. The real risk is using AI without governance, without data discipline, and without accountability and legal stuff.
Okay, awesome. So this is going very, I would say my cybersecurity folks and data governance folk will be really interested into all these things, right? I can see, right, many countries still do not have specific AI laws, and does that mean AI is legally regulated or not? But I also want to connect because first three question I think you are already covered. But the thing is, when we talk about laws, right, as you correctly mentioned, data governance, AI governance need data governance first as well, right? If we are talking about AI laws, first of all, we have to see whether data laws are already implemented or not. With your experience and looking into multiple countries, do you see organizations are already there and they have this data regulatory things already implemented in place and now they are looking on AI, or how things are going? Because AI is very, very new now. I'm not talking about traditional advanced analytic, which is machine learning, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about agentic AI and generative AI, which is very new, right? That is where this new AI laws are coming. So have you seen data regulations already being implemented in organizations?
Well, if you told me I am lawyer, I think that the best data regulation is in the European Union. That is the main core. Okay, but we have to know a thing. The law is very slowly like a turtle, and the innovation is a speed like the light speed. How I mean that? Because if we have a hyper regulations, the innovation stops. We have to know that at the first of all.
Very
The
true.
law regulates when the society needs them. Okay?
Mhm.
See as the legal as a vacuum of a possible errors of a fraud that will come of the crime organization, everything else. So the absence of a specific AI law does not mean that the AI operates in a legal vacuum. So for me, this is a dangerous misconception, especially in emerging markets like Latin America, because some companies believe that if their countries do not have a comprehensive AI statute of data and legal regulation, they can deploy AI without serious legal controls, and this is wrong. Remember, if we talk like a criminal organization, they look at frauds. Like, for example, they recopilate your voice data, and they, with the AI tools, they do like you are yourself, and you communicate like, well, yes, I am Mustafa, and this is my data account, and I need that transfers of the bank. So that is most common of the AI. So for that crime, also the law has to be in the first of all. Existing laws are already in a plane, that I told you in the United European, if we talk of the data law applies when the AI system process personal data, we are in an internal topic that's called the consumer protection law. Okay, so this applies when the AI affects the customers, the pricing, the advertising, monitoring performance evaluation, and also the financial regulation applies when an AI is used for a credit scoring, as we know about China, the fraud detection, anti-money laundering, and the risk profiling, and or investment decision. If you talk to me, this is the main topic important that the law is regulating, because something like the creation, something like the, do you remember that ChatGPT has do with the that important study of Japan that rose? Okay, that is more from intellectual property, but this is like a debate. Okay, what the law is in the first of all that want to regulate is in the crime law. Everything that it transforms, uses, that affect the cyber security. But the problem is that we don't have enough lawyers that want to regulate that, because they are using the law since like the Roman Empire. Okay, but the law has to actualize and see how that big data, how the generative intelligence can process confidential and sensitive information of the data. That is the first of all. And also, you talk to me, many jurisdictions, some constitutional principles also matter because we can regulate at privacy, equality, dignity, due process, non-discrimination of the data, because this is very important. I don't know if you read the news that 3 years ago that is some migrant people, the AI was confusing with tips, and they calculating the probability of them doing a robbery or some criminal stuff basing of the any of the stuff. Okay, so that is what the law is going to access, the principle of non-discrimination and the human rights. Okay, because also, and we have to do that. Does my country have an AI law? I don't think that is the correct question. I think the correct question is which existing obligations I have to apply to this specific AI to use case, because it's not the same that I use from the chatbot, like ChatGPT, like an AI that's doing for a cyber crime. Okay, it's totally different. So if we talk to Latin America, Asia, Africa, and many developing markets that are going to develop it, AI-specific laws may still emerge. Okay, they are recently born, but the courts and the regulation do not need to wait a perfect AI statute to evaluate that harm that is occurring every day. They can use existing legal principles to combat cybercrime. Okay, so this is also a global business dimension. For example, a company in Ecuador, Malaysia, Mexico, Colombia, or any other jurisdiction may serve European clients, processal data. Expectations use cloud providers from the United States or contract with international partners that require higher standards. But also, I think it's from the ethic of the own companies to do that, because we don't have to wait the perfect law to start to do the right things. Okay, fine. So in practice, global data flows make AI compliance international even when the company is local. So for the data and technology leaders, this means compliance cannot be treated as a local afterthought. AI systems are built on data flows, cloud infrastructure, APIs, model providers, subprocessors, and cross-border environments. The legal man is often more international than the company relates. So if you, I resume this topic, this part, AI law does not mean that don't exist the law. The law exists, the ethics exist, the human rights exist, but we have to apply in the nature of that society, and we have to involve also as the steps of the innovation go, but also we don't have to go a hyper regulation, because with that we are stopping the innovation of the scientists. Okay.
Okay, awesome. I think you have covered the second piece as well, which is like how to classify AI risk and difference between low risk and high risk. I think you have given example where that if you have certain number of business cases, you cannot implement cybersecurity and all those kind of stuff. I agree, absolutely agree with that. And I love your phrase when you mentioned that laws comes when something goes wrong, because you cannot have n number of laws based on n number of scenarios. You let the innovation happen, and if if people say something is going wrong and they raise their voice, then laws comes into picture, right? Based on that, right, one of the question, which is a great question, that what should companies document before deploying AI systems, especially in high impacted areas? So tell us about this one.
Okay, I have to make a thing. We say the topic of the automated decision making become a level risk. When it creates a meaningful impact on the, as I we saw, at the person life, the rights, the opportunity, the money, reputation, the access to service, and the legal position. Okay, so I don't think that if we talk of the automation of the data is a problem in itself. Automation can be extremely useful. It can improve efficiency, detect fraud, reduce human error, identify partners that can help organization to scale. But the legal risks increase when automatizations move from support to consequence. So if we talk a decisions about a credit, it's not just a number. I can affect wherever someone buys a house, start business, pay for educations, or stabilize their finance. A hiring decision is not just only a ranking exercise. It affects income, dignity, professional opportunity, and equality. And insurance decisions affects financial protection. Okay, so a healthcare decision can affect safety and life outcomes. A public service decision can affect basic rights. Okay, so there are legal risks. Okay, so I think the first problem that we have is opacity. What is opacity? If the company cannot explain why a person was rejected, blocked, ranked, excluded, flawed, or denied a service, that decision becomes difficult to defend when the AI took the decision. Second, is the bias. What is the bias? Is when the AI systems learn from historical data. If the historical data contains patterns of discrimination or inequality, the model can reproduce them and make them look objective. This is one of the most serious things. That's for that I say that we have to regulate and can be converted also in a statistical part. Okay, I think one of the problems is the poor data quality as we train that models. So a technical sophisticated model can still produce an unlawful or unfair result if the data is incomplete or dated, inaccurate, irrelevant, or taken out of context. So the fourth, for me, is important that the lack of proportionality. What I mean with that, in sectors like banking or insurance, risk detection is necessary, but the response must be proportionate. Okay, so detecting risk is one thing. Taking severe action without explanation, review, or appeal is another. And the fight is lack of challenge mechanisms. If affected person cannot request review, correct inaccurate data, submit additional evidence, or appeal the outcome, the system becomes legally vulnerable. So for the data audience that you had, I will add something very important. Okay, so automated decisions making is only as defendable as the data pipeline behind it. So if the organization cannot explain a data line, model, input, output logic, validation, monitoring, and a human review, that is the most important thing, because, okay, we say this is automatic decision, yes, but at the end of the test, the human revision is the most important thing. That's also say the law, and is also for the ethics, because and I saw a futuristic example. If we go to the general artificial intelligence or the super intelligence that could be in 10 or 15 years with those of quantum bits, uh, we don't know at what point that data will be with a human rights, okay? Because the first of all, and the principle of the law that is created is to protect the human being, not the animals, not the computers, not the robots, not the AI. It's always the human being. Okay? So the law is increasingly moving toward a simple principle. High impact automated decisions require transparency, reviewability, human accountability, and evidence. The more decisions affect a human being, the stronger the obligation to the law to explain, review, and justify the decision of the AI. So automatic decisions making is not illegally by nature. It can be because it will be backwards of the innovation of all we have. But it becomes legally dangerous when it's opaque, biases, unreliable, or impossible to challenge this automatic decision without the human supervision.
Mm. Okay, awesome, awesome. I think we are going into the next level where when we talk about that, everyone need to have these things. But as you roughly mentioned just few minutes back, like you cannot have everything for everything, right? All kind of principles or all kind of laws for regulatory, blah blah blah. You cannot every business case, every business use case cannot have that. It's not possible. If you do that, innovation will slow down, technologies will slow down. So what are the bare minimum internal controls which which you can say every organization must follow as far as AI and data is concerned?
Okay, I think that the bare minimum is to have a difference between a low risk and a high impact in why the AI governance could be the AI use. This for me follows. So companies should classify AI risks based on impact, context, data sensitive, autonomy, and the consequence of the error that produced the output of the AI. So the risk is not determined only by how advanced the technology is. A very advanced AI tool uses to summarize non-sensitive internal documents that may be low risk. Remember what Sam Altman, when he launched a ChatGPT 5.0, like October or September 2015, they say that it will be like the PhD student. Remember, the ChatGPT 3.0 is like a kindergarten. The fourth one is like a high school. So we will know that this is a giant steps. So the bare minimum is a little complicated because the innovation is too fast. Okay, so what is the bare minimum for me as a technological lawyer? Principle is that we have to distinguish a lot of stuff. So I think that the best of the AI is that we have to distinguish what is a low risk that this AI uses to support internal productivity with limited impact on individuals. For example, includes writing internal documents, summarizing non-confidential reports, translation internal logics, administrative decisions, and sensitive analytics. We know that ChatGPT, with the most advanced models, all most documents can be uploaded on ChatGPT, but we have to know some things. The risks and the algorithmic error is not until today have a solution. So, and also don't have the bare minimum of the customer service that do the chatbots, the marketing personalization, because for me it really where that for example, I said you recommend a product and it's very rare that is only recommended the most popular. Okay, not basic for the quality. So for that I am very thinking if they have like a trade or something. Okay, but it's my personal opinion. Okay, so for example, operational recommendation or internal decisions that support where the output influence, but not though determinate important though. So for me, is that the bare minimum that the important things and the human rights that's called. So the high impact AI use involve decisions or recommendations that affect all the main decisions, the rights, the opportunity, how we take the model, because you can do with the AI, for example, I want to go to eat some tacos, Mexican tacos. So the AI is using my own decisions only to take a decision of the common day. That's the point. Okay. So if we don't have a bare minimum, what we have to do in the human resources that take decision of the employment or in the health, on the insurance, education, public service, that is our own money or taxes, the biometric identification, that this is also very vulnerable, or access to essential service. Okay, so companies or the governance should ask these practical questions to have a low bare minimum to don't have high risks for the society. So I present these questions. What is the purpose of this AI system? What data does this process? Does it vulnerate any rights? Is personal or sensitive data involved? Who is affected by this output? Is ethnically, is sexually, is something like that. Some group of human beings that can be affected with that automatic decision that I told you before, what happened with the AI crime when the FBI, okay, with the migrants. What happened if the system is wrong? Because the algorithm wrong exists, the AI is not perfect and it don't want to be. Can a human review the result? This have to be also yes. Can the affected person challenge the decision? If the system used in a regulated sector, does it affect vulnerable people, immigrants, poor people? Does the system merely support a decision or this effectively determine the outcome? So this classification of the bare minimum is important because the governance must be proportionate. If every AI used and traded at a high risk, companies or the government create unnecessary bureaucracy and slows down the innovation. But if every AI use is treated as harmless, they create a legal exposure. So, if a mature governance model creates style of control, low-risk AI may require basic policy, compliance, and employee training. Medium risks may require documentation, review, better checks, and monitoring. High impact AI requires impact assessments, stronger human oversight, bias testing, audit trails, compliance mechanisms, cybersecurity controls, legal review, and senior approval. Okay? Approval. Sorry. That is where the lawyers, as me, do the compliance terms, the data terms, the policy terms, and work together with a multidisciplinary team. Okay? Of accountants, scientists, data, everyone else. Okay? To understand the risks and have the low minimum that AI could do, because the AI don't have a concept of what is the bare minimum. That's also true. So the data teams understand the architecture, the data quality, the model, and the behavior and the technical limitations. So the governance works only with that perspective. So, in resume, not every AI use requires the same level of control. This is true, because it's not the same that I use AI of healthcare like a chatbot. But the AI, you require a conscious decision about risk. Okay? So the risk classification of a bare minimum is a bridge between the innovation and the responsible governance, and this also the non-vulnerable, the high risk. But to have a very low minimum, we have to do a multidisciplinary team of lawyers, of governance, of data scientists to do especially what the society needs, and also that to have a bare minimum that everyone could agree.
Okay, awesome. So you have taken few words like principles, policy, compliance, right? I think it's a great opportunity because we have a lawyer here, right? Because when we talk about data governance and AI governance, we all know that there's a hierarchy of principles, policies, slash standards, then procedures, then comes tools and RASI and all those kind of stuff, right? People are very much confused between principles and policies and standards. Tell us about the difference between principal policies and compliance. When we talk about regulatory bodies have these compliance, blah, blah, blah. When you talk about compliance, are they giving principles and both policies, or they are only giving policies or standards? Tell us about these different terms for our audience.
Okay. We have to make that every one of these. Okay, compliance is a science. Okay, compliance is the science of the ethics that is not only for me, if for the companies, is also for the bureaucracy, for the government, is to use the right things. The as the American says, the Commonwealth. Okay, the Commonwealth for do the practice ethics and evite something like anti-money laundering and something for that. So what is that policy? I think that is an interesting question, okay? Because as you said before, is very confused for some people. I think that the main answer, because it's some definition, an internal use policy is a company document that defines how employees, managers, contractors, and departments may use, for example, artificial intelligence tools inside the organization. Okay, so what's an internal policy had to have? Approved enterprise tools, cloud platform, approval legal test, approval analytic tools, and approval generated systems. But also we have to put what of that things are provided. For example, obliging confidential client information, personal data, trade secrets, know-how, medical records, financial data, password, or privileged legal information into unauthorized IQs. So also the compliance have to be specifically on high impact areas such as hiring, credit, insurance, healthcare, customer, and that. So an internal use policy is not a document that says we use AI with responsible vampire. Okay, this is useful. It's a practical rulebook that tells people which AI tools can use, which data I can prove, which data they cannot be uploaded when approval is required, and how the output must be verified and who is accountable if something goes wrong. But if we have to know how the accountability will know, it's a department of a compliance. And that is the important thing. The department of compliance have been to separate it of the company main workers. Why? Because in some legislation, like the European Union, a compliance officer has to report to a government institution when privacy or politics has been vulnerable. Because if we know that this a worker that has been in the in a business, we know that they're going to be against them. This has to be an independent. And how can be independence that that compliance officer has to have an internal AI policy that also approves by the government. Okay, but that the government. But we in Latin America we have an institution that's called superintendency or protection data. Okay, so in that superintendent protection data is when you upload everything of the internal use policy. Okay, that is different of that document that you classified as who is the actionistas. Okay, but this is very, very interesting because it's a document that says what happened if I cybersecurity breach we have. Okay, so this internal policy is the document that defines how the tools inside the organization can be used and what's happened if we have a risk. Okay, basically that.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So as we have been talking about these all policies and principles, and so now one of the obvious question we talk about third-party AI providers, cloud tools, and cross-border data transfer, which we are referring as which we all know data sovereignty. We are referring data sovereignty is also a biggest one of the biggest problems is being there in data world. AI is something because AI is so smart and we all know that transparency, that is the whole reason. I think one of the biggest reason transparency need to be there because if you expose data cross border, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are many compliance regulatory requirement. Some says that if you are showing data cross border, then you can only show. Another policy says that you can show and the receiving party can download as well. Another policy says you can download, you can transform. Another policy says you can download, you cannot transform. Some policy says you can download, transform, but if the contract ends between sender and receiver, then you have to wipe out everything. So same thing, giving a data, exposing data, multiple policies are there, right? So tell us about this data sovereignty thing because that is becoming very important. And also cover this third party AI providers and cloud tools. Cover this whole piece. Yeah.
Right. Another interesting point of view that you have, because a company should manage AI providers as a strategic risk partners, not as an ordinary software vendors or providers. Okay, so this is for me a major shift because traditional software contracts often focus on license, price, support, service levels, and terminations, and also policies. But the AI contracts and also the third providers it must go further because AI providers may process personal data, confidential information, automatic decisions, trade secrets, and customer data also, and the new one, the financial data, the health care data, and strategic business information. So they may also influence decisions that affect the third parties. So if you have to be a contracting AI provider, companies should ask serious questions, and also for the compliance officer, the data processor offices, and the legal department. So, what data will the provider access? Which personal data have to be processed? Which confidential information have to be uploaded. Also, you are talking about an interesting policy of the cross borders law. Okay, so if I do for example, Anonymous, we know about Anonymous. For example, Anonymous do a breach data, but Anonymous have residence in UK. So if they doing something on Malaysia and doing have the servers, for example, in Ecuador, how can we protect the customer on Malaysia? Because we are doing like a third country. For example, Malaysia, UK, and Ecuador. In the UK, I taking the decisions, but the crime is doing in Ecuador, for example. So how can we do that? We have mechanisms like the International Court that is doing for the cybersecurity. Remember some things like mega love. You remember mega love, that a mega parasity that vulnerable property rights. But we have also something like the Interpol of the Europol that cross borders and they verify something like, for example, and this is off the topic, but the crypto frauds, okay? Or do you remember like when Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is misquoted and this of the $9 million of this meme coin that was a fraud, okay? But we have a problem with that because this is a politician and a politician has an immune. Okay, you can touch a presidential, you can go to the jail, but these unethical organizations that calls a sub law. What is a sub law? Is a law that is from recommendations, but remember, you can vulnerate the sovereignty of each country. That is for that is very, very difficult because remember, in North Korea, they have a proper agency of hackers. They have a proper agency of hackers and it's totally legal. So if it's illegal in one country, illegal in another country, and we have to, the barrier of sovereignty, that is very, very difficult to do, okay? Because we are a world with different sovereignty. One country are with monarchy, another country with dictators, another country with democracy. So it's very, very difficult that if in the political, like the word that the states on Iran puts in a court, this will be different if the government thinks the lawyers don't understand what is going on with the things of the breach, okay? Because when it's something about sovereignty, they say, okay, every government has his autonomy and another country or another organization cannot put the rules. That is all. So, but also they are existing some organizations that, for example, the cross-border data transfers are equally important. So, for example, if we use AI and clouds to often involve storage, processing, access, technical support, sub-processors, and infrastructure across multiple jurisdictions, a company may be located in Latin America, use a US cloud provider, serve to the European clients, and rely on support on terms in ISA. This is not usually anymore, but legally it creates a complex map of responsibilities, okay? So for companies dealing with European clients, there is a regulation that I called you the General Data Protection Regulations. So this is a related obligation that every country from the outside that have contract with any 27 countries of the European Union also, and it's obligatory to have a data processing agreement and standard contract clauses, or they cannot establish in the European Union. And this is, I think, super important. So for that, you can cut the cross-border things, okay? So for that, you can have the regulatory corporation clauses. AI contracts should include clear provisions or data protection, confidentiality, cybersecurity, audit, incident notification, liability, indemnity, intellectual property, and model training restrictions to contractors and implementation assistance. If you don't have that in the European Union, if you are in Australia, you have to be a client of Europe, you cannot do anything because that will be illegally and this is cut off. Okay, So I think that we apply something like the European Union, but we know that worldwide, like more than 200 countries, is very, very difficult. And you know that the most certainly to have a global government is the United Nations, but you know the problem of United Nations, okay? So in that case, some lawyers and me, we are talking about the independent organization that data companies can do without the government, that do providers international service that approves the rights over the data, but disclaims almost all the responsibility. So that has to be an international contract, that the AI contracts, if the contracts do not use regularity lines, audit, security, or transfers, obviously the client may carry most of the risk. Okay, so I think that the cross borders is very, very difficult to apply right now, have to be in the world. And also we know that this is fatal that some um, authorities, some governments put more importance in something than the data. But I think that I could be evolutionary with the terms of education and everything, and we need to strong international organizations of protection of the data that have a term mission assistance and have an international policy that every one of the company could accomplish.
Okay, awesome. So we are already around 48 to 50 minutes. So I think let's talk about this last question, which is the question for everyone, and everybody is talking about that a practical roadmap for CEO, legal terms and compliance officers, like what should they do in the next 80 days? The whole roadmap. I'm sure you have something under your belt for that.
Okay, if I have to have a roadmap that, well, I also use when I have to contract with an international company, is that I will tell the CEOs, the compliance officers, the AI officers that I also forgive that also exist.
Yeah.
The legal terms and compliance officers have to focus on four words: visibility, control, documentation, and accountability. That four words have to be very, very clear. The objective, as I told you before, is not to stop innovation. The objective is to move from uncontrolled AI adoptions to responsible AI governments, and also the topic, as I told you before, from the cross borders. So in the 90 days, companies should take these 10 practical steps. First of all, identify where AI is being used. That includes official tools, information and employment use. Many companies think they are not using AI because they have not protection and entering by AI platform, but employees may already be using generative AI without the permission of the companies. So we have to have a department of education and the AI meeting assistants. We have to have a specialist automated analysis data that provides the outputs of the AI, and of course the productivity tools. Second, we have to have create an AI inventory. So what they have to do, the company should know what tools have to be used by which departments, for what purpose, which data, and where are the providers. And also if the providers are regulated for a superintendency over something government stuff, because it could be a legal scam, or it will be a cyber organization, or something delictive. Okay? Third, we have to clarify the AI rights. So we have to separate the low internal productivity risks from the high impact uses that affect the people, the rights, the money, employment, health, credit, insurance, public service, or vulnerable groups, as I told you before. Four, the companies have to review the data every day, every hour, every minute. Determinar wherever AI tools process personal data, sensitive data, confidential information, trade secrets, financial data, and healthcare data, or also is very vulnerable to children's data. Five, we have to review vendors and contracts. So companies should know where the data is processed, where the data is used for training, what the processor exists, what security measures apply, what audit rights are available, and when responsible if something goes wrong. Okay? Because we have a department of compliance that they have to notify what is going wrong. Because remember, when a company has these data risks, the final responsible has to be the CEO, because the CEO is the legal representative of that entity. Okay? So for the own CEO that have to protect the legal stuff of himself, they have to do a correct compliance department and a correct data scientist. Right? 6. We have to adopt a practical AI policy. So not a theoretical document, not a document that is downloaded, not a document that you do in 2 minutes on ChatGPT. Has to be a useful policy personally of each country, of each company, of each reality, that should tell employees what AI tools they may be used, what information cannot be uploaded, when legal approval is required, how AI outputs must be verified, and which uses are provided. Okay? Because as I told you, it's not the same reality in Japan like in Ecuador. Okay? Different culture, different stuff. But there are some things, as I told you before, the main minimum, the low bar, that have to be in everyone's. As I told you, the European Union is has to be in the terms of regulation. The European Union is in the top. Okay, in regulation. So 7, I think that we have to define the human oversight. What I mean for that? For high impact decisions, companies must define who reviews AI outputs, what information is reviewed, wherever the reviewer can override the system, and how the review is documented. How is this documented? With the compliance officer. Okay, we don't have to be documented from the own AI. We have to do the human revision that has to be documented. And if we have a breach of the AI or something like that, we can comprobe with the human revision. This has to be a thing. Okay. 8, we have to create a complaint and incident mechanism. How do I mean of that? If an AI system produces an unfair, discriminatory, inaccurate, or harmful result, the company must know how to respond, don't have to excuses, and how to respond from the government when the customer's data is in serious danger. Because the final response, who has hold the data, is the own company, especially we talk about finance company, okay, intermediary companies, they have the most, okay. Also, we have to create a complaint and incident mechanism. So we have to talk as a real information when AI produce system as unfair, discriminatory, especially we do know that in the human resources of the companies when you apply to a job. Okay, you know, you put the data and in 1 second you are rejected. You don't evaluate my soft skills. You don't evaluate me how I can be useful to the company. So if this AI are discriminatory, inaccurate, or harmful result, the company must know how to respond, because they will have a legal lawsuit for discriminatory. Okay, and it's not their fault, but it's their fault to not review how this AI, that algorithm's errors, has to do harmful with that people. Okay, so 9, and this is very important to train employees. Okay, train employees because the education has to be day to day. The AI governance cannot live only in the legal department. Employees must understand the risks of letting confidential information, relying blindly on AI outputs, or using AI decisions that affecting people. Okay? Then we have to assign our ownership. What I mean with that? Someone must be responsible for AI governance. Ideally, this should be a cross-functional structure involving legal, compliance, cybersecurity, IT, privacy, data, governance, risk management, and business leadership. But this roadmap has to be realistic. It's not about perfection that we have to do every chess, okay? It's about to building a foundation that companies do not need to solve every AI challenge, but they must stop trying providing that this every worldwide that don't have a complete policy to do in the topic, especially of the cross-border clients and customers. So for a AI data, AI audience, I would say that AI governance should be built like any serious operating system. It needs architecture, ownership, controls, monitoring logs, escalation paths, and accountability. But the companies that act early will be better prepared for the regulations, the litigations, the audits, the client demands, the investor questions, and reputational challenge. The companies that wait until the first crisis will discover the retroactivity compliance is always more expensive. So if the future of AI belongs not only to those who innovate, but to those who can explain, control, and defend their innovation and capacitate their employment.
Awesome. I think you have covered it very well. You have few points on it. We have only 3, 4 minutes left. I think just to cover it up, the last point which you just mentioned, that one of the point actually to train the people, right? I am a big I'm a big fan of trainings. When I say training, not external training, I'm talking about basic data and AI trainings, not tools. I'm not talking about tools. I'm talking about data and AI awareness trainings for the whole organization. Just to sum up this whole thing, right? How important it is, because every 3 to 6 months, new technology comes, new behaviors comes, new innovations come. Shouldn't be these kind of basic training should be part of our company? I do remember like 15, 20 years back when we started our career, one of my boss used to tell me that, hey, every day, 30 minutes in a day, you have to train yourself, right? Train something or the other. So how important it is to train in-house people on these new fundamentals. I would say fundamental. I won't say tools and technologies, but fundamentals. Like for example, if you learn a car, right, drive a car, then whatever type of car comes, you know what is a car, right? Now there was manual cars. The moment it goes to the automated car, you need to learn one time automated car. Then you know, you can drive any kind of. So how? What is the importance of that? We have to tell people because people are not ready. They are still. I go and talk to the people, right? I ask them what is data. People still do not know what is data, right? Second part is to to become a data culture company. First, you need to understand what is data. Tell us about that.
Okay, it's important thing that you say because I think that Anaya can be possibly that the 99% of the people don't know what we are talking about or don't know how is important those things.
Yeah.
But also, I was talking about in another interview, and we are talking about the AI as the people who don't know how to read, how to use the internet. This is the analphabetic AI and the analphabetic use of the data. Okay, so first of all, we have to know the how ignorance everybody is about that because there is a of so the scientist data, the legal data, the accountability data, the CEO data. So everyone is in the old way. Okay,
Yeah.
so first of all, we have to have multidisciplinary organizations. Then, if we talk to the companies, employees must understand that what type of data they are handling and they are using from them. Okay, the personal data, the sensitive data, the confidential information, the trade secrets, the financial data, or internal business information. If they do not understand the nature of the data, the risks, and what's going to do in the future, they cannot understand how can be on the risks. Okay. The second is the fundamental of the data minimization. What is I mean with data minimization? That everyone else don't have to learn to how to load up, how to create data, how to create algorithms, but they have to know how what is a data and how in its importance and what is the legal exposure of that. Okay, so I in a school I learned some math, I learned English, I learned Spanish, but I think, and it is important that we have a signature, we have a material of that, of science data. Okay, so as we know how important is that. Okay, so third is the fundamental and is the confidentiality and the control access. So we talk of the companies and employees must to know which data can be shared with the company, which not, which with what tools are safely, and under with what authorization. Okay. The fourth is fundamental because it's the output verification. So everyone has to be trained to never blindly trust AI outputs. Okay, because AI can hallucinate,
Yeah.
misinterpret context, reproduce bias, or generate confident but incorrect answers. Do you know that when you are using ChatGPT, the link that you have can be shared with everyone else, and and they can know everything what you do with ChatGPT. And everyone with ChatGPT, and this is important, and has a study, is replacing the psychologist. So some people using as a psychologist ChatGPT. With that personal data that they have, they can terminate, in the terms of socially, a person for all the data that I put. That's very interesting. So, not only for the legal terms, it's on the personally, the psychic. Okay. So, another thing is the escalation of the data. So, what I mean with that, for example, for employment must know when to stop and ask legal compliance, cybersecurity, or data protection terms before using AI, especially in high impact areas such as employment, credit, healthcare, insurance, fraud detection, or customer profiling. So, for me, on the information, the awareness. What is awareness? For example, when the employee should know what to do if they accidentally upload confidential data, receive a discriminatory output, detect an error, or use an authorized tool. So for me, the goal of training is not to turn everyone, employment, every citizen into an expert lawyer or data scientist. The goal is to make everyone aware enough to recognize risks of the data or becomes a damage for itself. So training should be practical, frequent, and role-based. A marketing team, a legal team, a data scientist team, a customer service team does not need exactly the same training, but everyone should understand the basics.
Basics.
What data can handle, what data cannot be uploaded with AI tools, how to verify AI outputs, when human review is required, and when to escalate to legal compliance, cybersecurity, or data protection. So the objective is simple. Employees must learn, and everyone must learn to recognize risks before the repair is unharmable. Okay?
Yeah. Awesome. I think this is a great response on this one because I've been telling people, I've been educating people that, in fact, I'm creating a training itself myself. Like people have been asking that, tell us what is the basics of data. When I try to explain it, it becomes very, very basic and they are very surprised that they are not aware what is data. So you need to, as you correctly mentioned, once you understand what is data, then of course you will understand why you have to put certain policies, why you have to follow some principles, because you need to understand if the data is your personal data, right? Then within your personal data, there are many things you need to have a PII data, you have to have a privacy policy on it. But there are certain uh, attributes of you, your age, your color, what you are wearing, right? Where you are working. These are not important. You need to have security, but you don't need the policy, right? There are many things. Once you understand the basics of data, then all these things come into which. I think it was a great session, Franklin. Uh, just for a closing note, you want to say something before we close it?
Okay. If I told something, and I want that everyone had in mind, is that it's impossible that everyone knows everything of data. Okay. We First of all we have to reconsider our ignorance. Okay. And this is for humility. Okay, I am a lawyer, you are a data scientist, and we know specific things. So for that, I think that is very important. And I love that you do that. The podcast, let's talk about data that are very few in worldwide, not only in Ecuador, Asia, Europe, or America. But we have to be very clear that artificial intelligence is not a video game. Artificial intelligence is not a mode. It's the most powerful tool that companies, government, and citizens have today, and it always improves, accelerates innovation, reduces costs, detects risks, and creates extraordinary business opportunities. But power without governance becomes exposure. So my final message is that companies should not be afraid of AI, but they should not be naive either. So AI must be adopted with visibility, discipline, documentation, human oversight, and accountability. The future will not belong only to the company that use AI faster. It will belong to the companies that can use AI responsibly, explain how to use it, control the risks, protect data, manage providers, and how the human capital, that the data scientists, that the lawyers, and the compliance officers decisions that are challenges in that liberal market. So AI governance and the data itself or the AI is not the enemy of anyone else. Okay, this is not Terminator. So this is not Skynet, but is a very risk if makes the innovation sustainable, trustworthy, and level. So AI can automate process, but cannot automate responsibility. The responsibility has to be for the humankind. Okay, so the future of AI will become not only for those who innovate, but those who can explain, control, and defend innovation with the proper education.
Awesome. Thank you, Franklin. It was pleasure talking to you. I think I've learned a lot of things today. I'm sure our audience have a lot of content from today's podcast regarding AI governance and data governance from the angles of lawyer side, right? Because that is where things are coming. And I love the way when you mentioned that uh, governance and laws should not stop innovation because innovation is a speedy thing and law is not to stop it, rather for civilians and people, what something can goes wrong, then you come up with the laws. You cannot come up with the laws with the n number of hallucination and combinations, then innovation will stop. I love that about it. So again, thank you so much, Franklin. Lovely talking to you. Pleasure to have your experience sharing with our audience. Hopefully we can have another session sometime.
Of course, Mustafa, if you want the process session, for me, fine. Okay,
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. Take care.
thanks. Thanks.
Bye
Talk to
bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.